Okay everyone, I'm Fabiola Miranda Sinaga. In here, I want to explain you about active voice versus passive voice. The first one, I want to explain you about active voice. So, what is active voice? Active voice means that a sentence has a subject that acts upon its verb. Active voice is used in a clause whose subject expresses the main verb's agent. That the subject does the verb designated action. That means in active voice, the subject of the sentence does the action. Passive voice, that a subject is a recipient of a verb action. So, how to form active voice sentence? The first one, we must start with a subject. The second, add a verb after the subject. And the third is add any modifier. Like I said before that the active voice occurs when the subject does the action of the sentence. Let's look the example of active voice. The first one is the snake bit the mouse. Second, Donnie eats bananas. 3. Uncle bought a luxury car. And the 4 is the dog chased the cat. Okay, next. The second is what is passive voice? Passive voice is a sentence on the other hand when the subject is acted on by the verb. The passive voice is always constructed with a conjugate form of to be plus the verb past participle. The passive voice occurs when the action is done by what seems like it should be the object. You can use the passive voice form if you think that the thing receiving the action is more important or should be emphasized. You can also use the passive voice form if you don't know who is doing the action or if you don't want to mention who is doing the action. The example of passive voice, there is 3 in here. The first, apple was eaten by Buddy. Second, the money was stolen by Mita. The third is the mouse was chased by a snake. Here's a tip. What's to remember to change a sentence from passive voice into active voice. That's identify the subject before. Okay guys, let's see the form of active voice and passive voice and how to change the sentence of active voice into passive voice. The first, present tense. In the present tense, active form, the form is subject, do or does, plus verb 1, and the example is the lecturer teach English. Passive voice, subject, plus to be is MR, plus verb 3, plus by, plus object, and the example is English is taught by lecture. So you can look the example. I have changed the sentence. Okay. Number 2 is continuous tense. In continuous tense, the active form is subject, to be is MR, plus verb ing, plus object. And the example in here, the lecturer is teaching English. The passive voice form is subject plus to be is MR plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object, and the example is English is being taught by lecturer. I want to explain the number 3 is present perfect tense. The active form is subject plus have or has plus verb 3 plus object, and the example the lecturer has taught English. Passive voice, form is subject plus have or has plus been plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English has been taught by lecture. And number 4 is present perfect continuous tense. In the active form, subject plus has, have or has plus been plus verb 1 ing plus object. And the example is the lecturer has been teaching English. And passive voice form is subject plus have or has plus been plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English has been being taught by lecturer. Number 3, past tense. The active form is subject plus verb 2 plus object plus object. And the example is the lecturer taught English. Because in here, verb 2 teach is taught. And the passive voice form is subject plus to be plus was or were plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English was taught by lecture. Okay, next. Number 6 is past continuous tense. In the active form is subject plus to be was were plus verb 1 ing plus object. And the example is the lecturer was teaching English. And the passive form is subject plus to be was were plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English was being taught by lecturer. Then past perfect tense. The active form is subject plus had plus verb 3 plus object. And the example is the lecturer had taught English. And the passive voice form is subject plus had plus been plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English had been taught by lecturer. And the number 8 is in the past perfect continuous tense. The active form is subject plus had plus been plus verb 1 ing plus object. And the example is the lecturer had been teaching English. And the passive voice form is subject plus had plus been plus being and plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English had been being taught by lecturer. We continue to the number 9. Future tense. Active form is subject plus will plus verb 1 plus object. The example, the lecturer will teach English. And the passive form is subject plus will be plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English will be taught by lecturer. And then number 10 is future continuous tense. In the active form is subject plus will plus be plus verb 1 ing plus object. The example is the lecturer will be teaching English. And the passive voice form is subject plus will plus be plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English will be being taught by lecturer. And the number 11. Future perfect tense. In the active form is subject plus will plus have plus verb 3 plus object. And the example is the lecturer will have taught English by the lecturer will have taught English. And the passive form is subject plus will plus have plus been plus verb 3 plus by and plus object. The example is English will have been taught by lecturer. We can continue to the number 12. Future perfect continuous tense. In the active form is subject plus will plus have plus been plus verb 1 ing plus object. And the example is the lecturer will have been teaching English. And the passive voice form is subject plus will plus have plus been plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example, English will have been being taught by lecturer. And then in number 13, past future tense. In the active form, subject plus will plus verb 1 plus object. The example is the lecturer will teach English. And the passive voice form, subject plus will plus be plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English will be taught by lecturer. And the number 14, past future continuous tense. In the active form, subject plus will plus be plus verb 1 ing plus object. The example, the lecturer will be teaching English. The passive voice is subject plus will plus be plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English will be being taught by lecturer. We continue to number 15, past future perfect tense. In the active form is subject plus will plus have plus verb 3 plus object. And the example is the lecturer will have taught English. And the passive voice form is subject plus will plus have plus been plus verb 3 plus by and plus object. And the example is English will have been taught by lecturer. We can look in the last tense in passive voice and active voice form. The last is past future perfect continuous tense. In the active form is subject plus will plus have plus been plus verb 1 ing plus object. And the example is the lecturer will have been teaching English. Passive voice form is subject plus will plus have plus been plus being plus verb 3 plus by plus object. And the example is English will have been being taught by lecturer. Okay guys, I want to conclude what I presented before today, that the emphasized key point of the sentence is performer of predicate verb or verb using active voice. On the other hand, if the emphasized key point of sentence is undertaker of predicate verb using passive voice is more suitable. That's all my presentation today. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy my video and understand what I present before. Thank you. Bye.